Hey, what's good? My name is SATURDAE, and this is part 9 of my EDM production series. So I want to continue adding more elements to this first half of the track. I'm primarily going to be focusing on drums. I want to cover a couple of things I did off stream real quick. So there was a little bit too much stereo image in this bass. It was just kind of taking me out of it. So I ended up pulling this blend down to about 13. And I eased up on this width reduction on Ozone Imager 2 because of that. And then I pulled this sub down a little bit just for now. So I want to start adding some more drums and getting those filled out a little bit more. So the first thing I want to do is address this clap. I actually really like this clap, but I want to add a acoustic layer to it. So let's go to claps. Something like this might work actually. And something really annoying about the Drum Machine Designer is when you try and drag it in after you leave a session, you'll get this error. I don't really know an easy way around this. So what I usually do is I just drag this in, create a new instance of Drum Machine Designer. And then I can, this is the clap, so I can just drag that out of there and then drag it into here. It's kind of annoying. And before I get going, I'm going to highlight these and click Convert to MIDI region and then Control click and Separate by Note Pitch. And it'll automatically put them on the channel where they're supposed to be at. Okay, so let's copy this clap up here, bring this way down. And this is also in mono. We're going to change that to stereo. Okay, so now we have our clap layered and it sounds like this. This one's just nice. It adds just like a nice natural body to it. And so let's mix these independently real quick. A lot of times too, when you make a new instance of a sampler, it can automatically create these buses. I'm going to hit no send on them because I don't want them going there. It's super annoying. I actually don't know how to disable that. So if anyone does, please let me know. But I'm going to add on an EQ. I'm also quickly going to go into the sampler and I kind of want to fade off this tail part here. I'm going to roll off some of the lows here. Also going to roll off a bit of the highs. Might do like something like that for there, and then I'm going to boost this 2K region here because it just sounds nice. And then we'll compress and clip this. So for a compressor for this, I'll just use the 1176 at fast setting. I'm going to pull this way down. Something like that should be okay. And then we'll do some light clipping on this. Maybe like 2 dB. All right, and now let's mix this one. All this crap can go. We really just want this like high part. I'm not even going to EQ the rest of this. I just wanted to roll off some of the lows there. We're going to apply that same compressor. We're also going to do 1176 with a fast setting. Give it a nice little saturation. Something like that should be good. And now we're going to clip this one as well. Something like that should be okay. And so now we have these claps. So these sound all right, but the thing that they're missing to me is they're missing reverb. So I'm going to send these to a bus and I'm going to use bus 12 for this. I'm going to send these at like, I don't know, like 12.5. And we're going to find where bus 12 is. Bus 12 is right here. I'm going to create a track with it. So this way it appears in our arrangement window. I'm going to pull this all the way down to the bottom and put this into our little aux stack here. And I'm going to name this drum verb. And I'm going to get rid of this space designer and I'm going to change it to Pro R. I'm going to make sure that this is stereo as well. Okay, perfect. Use Studio B for this. And something like that should be okay. And now we have this nice reverb. To reiterate this point, the reason I'm using this bus, we're going to be applying this to a ton of different drum samples, and that's going to take up a ton of CPU, a lot of time. It's just annoying to do it a different way. So instead we can just send them from their channel to this one mix, and it gives them a cohesion. I'm also going to add on Kickstart 2 underneath this, just to give it a tiny bit of movement. It's just kind of nice. I kind of like doing that. Control click here and make a hand. Okay, Okay, so the claps are sounding all right. I want to check this hi-hat now. Okay, so let's load an EQ in here. I'm gonna roll off some of the lows here. And right here, at some of the body, I'm gonna just dynamic this out a little bit. Just when it gets too loud, I don't wanna like reduce too much of that. I'm gonna leave the rest as it is. And then I'm gonna apply some compression here. I'm gonna go with a medium 1176 for this. And I'm gonna go kind of gentle with this. I'm just trying to get a little bit more of a consistent tone with it. And then the last thing I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna add on some overdrive. I'm gonna find a tone that sounds nice. Maybe around here, pull this back a little bit. So again, looking down here. Just makes it like this is essentially like clipping. You're using distortion is another form of clipping, but it adds a little bit more saturation and grit. And I'm gonna also send this to that reverb. So I'm gonna select in here, go drum verb, and just pull this up. If you send this at 0, what this does is, again, it's sending a copy to this aux channel, which is this reverb channel. And I don't wanna send all of it. If I do, then it's going to sound completely saturated. I don't want that. Think of this as dry and wet knob. So I'm gonna pull the dry down, or sorry, the wet down. And now our drums are starting to sound nice. Like they're all in the same room right now, so it sounds kind of pretty. So let's give this an icon as well. That's just open hi-hat. And then this track was our original kick, so I'm going to delete this because we don't need it anymore. Okay, so now I'm gonna make a loop that kind of extends the duration of the whole intro, and I'm gonna hit play, and I'm gonna look for a bunch of random percussion sounds that sound nice to me. I'm gonna start dragging a bunch of them in, and then we'll kind of sort through them, see what we like, see what we don't, and then it should start filling out the drums pretty nicely.
Don't know what to say. If I start to fade, I start to fade away. Don't know way, will we be okay? If I start to fade, if I start to fade away.
So I pulled in a good amount of sounds here. The first thing I want to do is I'm gonna unmute those. I'm gonna select all of these. I'm just gonna drag the gain of all these down. Sometimes these samples are super loud. The one I want to start with is this one, because I know where I think I want it on every other upbeat. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna drag this here. Perfect. All right, so now we have something like this.
Don't know what to say. If I start to fade away, will we be okay? If I start to fade.
Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm gonna drag all these to. Let's go kind of towards the start and try and get these all in the first little loop here, so we can kind of make a 4-bar loop. Now I don't really have a method for this. I'm just kind of doing it randomly until I find some tones that sound good. So like right here, this sounds like it's in a good spot. I'm gonna drag this. I'm gonna drag the ones that I like towards the top. So I have a decent outline going here. It's all these. I'm just gonna add a few more things and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so I came up with this kind of rhythm pattern thing. I'm gonna bring some of these up and just organize them real quick, just so that they're sort of ascending by appearance. That's just my method for it. Just makes it a little bit easier to see the sounds. I'm gonna color these all pink so that I know that they're drums. And then I'm gonna make this one track stack. So I'm going to create a summing stack, that's Shift-Command-D. And we're gonna name this Percussion. And I'll denote it with this little symbol thing. It's like sticks. I'm gonna drag this all the way up to our drums here, squeeze it in there. And I dragged it into that mix so that it'll be a part of this nested mix. So now when I close this, it closes in with it. You can like force this into a different mix by doing that. And now we have all this percussion in here. And if I solo this, this is what this sounds like. It sounds really bad, isolated, but in context with everything else, it sounds like this. So now we're going to go through each of these sounds and mix each one individually. This should be pretty quick though, because we really don't have to do that much with each of them. It's not like we're making like a crazy bass or anything. So this was let me turn off processing and go to the original sample. Originally I found this sample. Just kind of like a cool shout. It sounded cool in the mix. So this was slightly off key. I figured it out by just loading up an EQ and looking for a spike. So right here, I could tell that it was slightly off key. So I just raised it a semitone to get it into the correct key. And then I added this plugin's called Little Alter Boy. I just like it for the formant shift. It's just kind of quick. So I brought the formant down of it, did a bandpass. So it's just some of the mid frequencies there. Put on a saturated echo, reverb, and then some tremolo that's on like moderately intense. So now it sounds like this. So we're gonna name this Shout Echo, and we'll give this a new icon. I'll just do the single mic, I guess. Sure. Now we have this. Okay, so this is just like a tambourine. So, and I think this is a mono source. So I just made another instance of an audio track and just brought it up here. And I'm just gonna make this stereo. Okay, yeah, it was definitely missing out. I don't know what happened there, but now we have this tambourine. And something I'm going to do really quick too, I'm just going to select all of these tracks, press X, and I'm going to send them all to my drum reverb while I have that open. That way I don't have to open that individually each time, and I can simply dial the knob back. Let's change this icon. There we go. Let's open up this EQ. Don't need any of that low end. Let's load up Pro C2. I use a regular 1176 for this. Give it some output gain back. And we can pan this off to the side a little bit. So that just puts it in a different space. Technically, it's not true panning. I believe you can, if you open up your mixer and control click on here, you can do binaural panner, and that's like true panning. This is more of balancing because you're turning down the left or right signal, but I don't really have a use for binaural panning most of the time. So I just use directional balance panning, I guess. So I'm just going to off-center this to slightly to the right, I guess. Usually, I like to make sure everything sounds good in the mix too before panning. Don't try and pan to avoid a problem, because that'll make your problems worse. All right, let's move on to the next sound. We'll change this icon to this. So once again, I'm going to roll off all this. Just want to give as much room for that low end as possible. That's why I'm doing this with these sounds, like all of this. I don't need any of that because this is the main tone for it. Probably also going to filter off some of this, something like that. All right, let's load in 1176 again. Just getting a more consistent tone with all of these. Okay, that should be fine. A lot of these are super subtle, but they all add up. So this sound, I found this sample and I thought it sounded cool. So it's really like distorted and just like kind of like ambient. I have this on every upbeat, and it's just adding kind of like a cool tone. And while I'm here too, I'm just gonna select all these again, and I'm gonna load in span. So I know I'm probably gonna be checking a lot of these stereo imaging on them. Yeah, so we have a lot of phase issue on this one. First thing I wanna do is probably control the sides a little bit. So we're gonna switch that to a side, to around like 700. Yeah, right around here is where we're having the main issue. And that's just because this is a heavily saturated with reverb sound. So anytime you get a lot of reverb on a signal, it'll have a lot more side information, which will, it'll result in it being out of phase. I'm gonna roll off up to like around here, I think. We can use a dynamic EQ here, control some of this range. I'm gonna roll off the highs a little bit just to get rid of some of the distortion. And then I'm gonna use a digital compressor on this one just to control that pluck, because it's kind of poking out a lot harder than everything else. I'm gonna slow the release time on this a little bit, just give it a little bit more natural of a return. And I'm gonna try something here called spectral EQ. So I'm going to use this dynamic band. I'm gonna expand this band a little bit. And I'm gonna slide this over here, and I'm gonna click this button. And this will target like sharp resonances essentially and make it catered to make it a little softer. Yeah, so it's kind of ducking that a little bit. I'm going to increase its attack pretty fast and then have a medium release to kind of match that compressor that I have. Turn on auto gain so we can hear it. Auto gain just normalizes it so you can hear your effects before and after EQ at the same level. Yeah, we definitely controlled some of that some of that distortion harshness, but we also kind of want some of that in there because it's part of the sound. It sounds cool. Something I think I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this second EQ, and I believe it's band 2. I'm going to click frequency, 223. No. Okay, maybe it's band 3. 32. Yep, so that matches this band. I wish that it was a little bit easier to tell, but I'm going to set this right here like that, and I'm actually going to bring down some of these highs for this beginning part. They're just poking through a little bit much for me in the intro.
Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away.
Maybe something like that. Okay, let's move on. Our next thing is this. Let's check our phase. It's not too bad. It's pretty fine. Let's get all of this out. And then I'm going to use dynamic EQ here, and I'm going to cut a little bit. Probably don't need all these highs either. And probably at 1K, that's an area that we want to focus on. And let's once again use a digital EQ on this. I don't really care to add saturation to it. We'll have a fast release. It looks like it's doing a good job. I want to add another EQ after this. This harmonic is poking through really aggressive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make kind of a sharp cut here. This is just like poking out way too much for me. I'll probably clip this. It's way too much clipping. This one's going to take a bit more processing just to kind of control that pluck is a little bit aggressive. And one more thing I want to try with this is just a way to kind of control that transient a little bit more. And I think I want to also sidechain this with the kick. Ease off, fast attack, fast release, max knee. Do a 5-to-1 ratio. Instrument, looking for DR kick 2, which is right here. This kind of gives it a more consistent signal and then also gets it out of the way. And then lastly, we can use some modulation, tremolo, and just get some movement on this. Yeah, something like that. And I know this is a lot of work just for something that's a tiny layer in a song, but again, all these things kind of add up, at least in my opinion. And we'll name this guitar pluck. I'll just throw a guitar for here. I know I don't think it's a guitar, but it kind of sounds like one. Okay, next up. Okay, so we have Perk Rim Hit. Use this icon for it. This one should be obviously much faster than the other one. I think there's gonna be some lows here. Get rid of that. Like, all of that is unnecessary for this. You're not even going to be able to hear it if you're isolated, I guess, but we're not going to be isolated. So I'm going to use the digital compressor on this one as well. Don't need any saturation. Just want to kind of get a more consistent tone. There we go. So these are all audio files, and I can't control their velocities to make them sound like they're independent hits, really, unless I wanted to go in and manually automate each one. So what I did is I loaded in this tremolo plugin. I brought the phase down to 0. And then I reduced the smoothing a little bit, brought the depth down, and then increased the rate. So now it'll kind of trigger sort of similar to like a sidechain function. It'll make each hit different. So here's without it. And here's with it. Just kind of gives a little bit more movement, makes it feel like someone's actually playing it. All right, 6. So that one's done. Next one. So I'm just going to load in Ozone Imager. I'm going to reduce the width of this a tiny bit. Let's EQ this real quick. Again, we don't need any of this low stuff. All right, let's compress this real quick. Digital EQ, or sorry, digital compressor. I do not want to add saturation to this. It's already almost like a synthy tone anyway, so that's why. And let's get some tremolo on this to just give it some movement. Something like that, sure. All right, we're like halfway through these. There's definitely some stereo image on this. I'm gonna use ozone imager again. I'm also gonna use panning to kind of make it a little bit more center. And now we can EQ, compress, and move on. Digital compressor. Perfect. And I also want to add on a delay, just give it a cool effect. We'll do an echo. Bring this down, bring this up. Let's try 16 dotted. Pull this feedback down. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Okay, and now we have these guys, which are the little zaps. We're gonna revisit this sound because I'm gonna just recreate this with Serum. It's this zap. It's just not poking through the way I want it to, so I'm gonna recreate this. So we will come back once we finish the last 4 of these, or 5. Okay, we have this snap now. Get rid of these. Yeah, all of that can go. Digital EQ yet again. I pretty much only use saturating EQs on like core drums or core features of the song. For a bunch of smaller percussive stuff like this, I don't really want to add saturation because they're more accents. My goal isn't to make them stand out more, it's just to kind of get them consistent with the rest of the track. I think I'm going to clip this though, just to get it more present. Just want to get a lot more gain out of this. Yeah, I can get a ton out of this. There we go, now we're popping. Okay, all right, next we have this. Let's get rid of this low end crap in here. Just gonna keep that nice, pretty click up there. Tone this a little bit for consistency. Let me double check this EQ. So this will reduce this a little bit, but bring up the rest of this. I could use a slower attack time to accent this a little bit more, but I'd rather get more of these harmonics in. And now to bring that back up, I can just clip after this to restore a little bit more of that. So now that click punches through a lot better. All right, the last 3. Okay, I have an idea for this. I'm gonna get rid of all that low end. I'm just gonna copy over our settings here because they should be pretty close. All right. And I kind of want to make this flutter a bit. So I'm gonna try something. I'm gonna go to oscillator, turn on noise, make sure it's audio in, make sure that note latch is on. And then we are just gonna use LFO1, apply this to our noise level and increase this rate. Maybe dotted. There we go. That's what I wanted. Just something kind of cool and weird. And a lot of tremolo at the end of this too. Just give it movement. That's kind of sick. Again, not something you're really even going to hear in the mix that much, but I know it's there, and then its presence just adding to the stereo with sounds kind of sick. Like, that's hype. Once again, we're going to get rid of these lows. So we really just want like this top end part. Digital compressor. I don't know if I need to clip this. I'm going to do it. All right, last thing. All of this can go. And we will clip this sound because I already know it's going to be hard to hear in this mix because it's like a mud frequency. Now I'm going to pan this to, yeah, we'll go right with this one. And I'm going to kind of go through this and just listen and then pan stuff. Okay, so now we have that loop going. I do need to recreate this zap, so we're going to do that in just a second. Here's what our drums sound like now, though. And with everything. Okay, so quickly we're gonna recreate this Zap with Serum, and after that we're gonna do submix mixing on that percussion sum, because it is very muddy. There's a lot of reverbs going on and stuff, so it just sounds a little cloudy, so we're gonna fix that. Let's go down to, we're gonna drag this guy into synths, and I just wanna visualize where these are happening at. So I'm gonna create a MIDI region, and I'm gonna make these in the key of the song, which is G. I think the second one was here, and third one is here. And then we have 2 right here. P is the pencil tool, by the way, so I'm just using that to draw in, and these should be right next to each other. I'm gonna Command A here, Shift Option, and click and drag so they're all the same length. Perfect, and now we can copy this over. I'm gonna rename this, we'll give it this little icon, and we're gonna color this blue. All right, and now we can delete this one because we don't need it anymore. And let's make a Zap real quick. This should be pretty easy to do. Now that these are all the same length too, I'm going to reduce the length of them to make them just short and stabby. And now I'm gonna open Serum 2 here. Okay, so this is the Zap that I made. And in context, it's very subtle. You can't hear it like too much, but I wasn't trying to have it pop out. This only took me like a minute to make. So all I did was just use a default saw wave. I pitched it up 1 octave, gave it 3 voices of unison, turned down the blend a little bit to like 61. I'm gonna save this FXP and upload it for you guys too. And I used LFO1, applied it to my coarse pitch. So it's going back and forth, starting high and going low. Because I changed this LFO type, I moved it from the center over here. And so it's going from high to low, changed it to envelope. I added this filter that it's routed into. So the filter opens up and shoots up resonance when it opens. Just like that. I'll pull this back a little, I guess. And then the mixing was pretty straightforward. I just added this soft clip to get it a little bit louder, rolled off some of the lows that got reintroduced. Did a bandpass for the delay, gave it 1/16 left and right, turned down the feedback, turned down the mix and had it apply with this LFO as well, so it opens when that filter opens. And then did the same thing with reverb here, just a pretty straightforward low cut. And finally, I just did some side EQ here, just to get it back into phase a little bit. And this is the final result. So now what I want to do is I want to adjust, I want to go into this percussion sum. So we're going to load in span. You can see we're getting a ton of information like right here at 500, and it's making it really boxy and just kind of gross. So I want to load in this EQ. And just because it's on a submix, I'm going to use linear phase. I'm going to try and filter out a lot of these lows. And I'm only using dynamic here because I don't want to destroy the body of this. And I think I'm going to give it some brightness so that I can kind of cut here a little bit. Before, after. It just made it like a lot brighter and less muddy. Now I do want to apply a couple of things here. I'm going to apply 2 compressors. And the first one, I am going to just use a default compressor. I'm going to bring the ratio down a little bit, and I'm going to bring the knee down a tiny bit. We can keep the attack there. We're going to speed up the release pretty quick. And I'm just going to try and get like 2 dB of compression here. This is just making all of these a little bit more consistent, less transient heavy going into that main drum mix. And for our second compressor, I'm going to choose this SSL. This is free on my site. It's a preset I made that emulates the SSL bus compressor. And again, we were just looking for 2 dB of reduction here. This just gives them like kind of a groove together. That should be okay. And there we go. This emulates the SSL. So it has a 3 millisecond attack time, 10 millisecond release time, 3:1 ratio. I just set threshold until there's around 2 dB reduction, and I use the sidechain function in Pro Q4 to roll off all of the lows here up to 150, just so the compressor doesn't grab anything below here. Generally, those sounds are a lot more present in your mix, so I always use the high-pass filter function on bus compressors if they have them. If they don't, I actually won't use them, unless I'm using them like for this. I guess it would have been okay because I'm filtering out the lows, but okay. So now we have something like this. All right. right, so let's go to the drop. We're going to convert these to MIDI notes and separate by note pitch. And I'm going to erase that and copy this up. Duplicated those notes for some reason. There we go.
Fade away. Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away?
Okay, so the last thing I want to do before wrapping up this session is I want to mix this synth Pluck because we haven't really gotten around to it since we imported this. Now, the key to making plucks is really just having a very quick attack and a very quick decay as well. So it makes this like kind of triangle shape almost. And generally you want to use a sine wave for it. You can use a bunch of different waveforms to get a pluck, but generally sines are the preferred way. So let's do some sound design with this and see what's going on here. I'm actually going to duplicate this track. I'm going to copy these over. And I think trying to make something like arpeggiate might be kind of cool. So I'm going to bypass that note repeater that we set up in like the first or second session or something. And I'm going to test out this arpeggiator mode. All right, so what I ended up doing is I copied this pluck down, I turned off note repeater, and I bypassed this first oscillator. I added in these two. We'll focus on the first one. I added some unison, brought down the blend a bit, and I routed this out to filter 2. And filter 2, I pulled off a bunch of the highs using a low pass filter. And for effects, I kept most of them default. However, I made this macro. So this is controlling my mix for the hyperdimension, a little bit of distortion. I'm going to turn that up a little bit actually. The reverb, and also this filter cutoff. Oscillator C, I brought down one semitone, gave it 3 voices of unison, turned down the blend, gave it a high pass filter to get rid of some of the lows. That's also going to filter 2. Now this macro, I'm going to just label it intensity. I think I spelled that wrong. And with this all the way down, sounds like this. And then as I push it up, so that's kind of the effect it does.
Fade away.
And then with the other sound.
Fade away. Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to?
All right, so now I'm gonna bring these to the top. Name this synth Pluck lead and synth Pluck arp. And now let's mix these real quick. It should be pretty straightforward. I'm gonna add an EQ here. Let's get rid of all of this. Clear out some of this as well. And now we're gonna use a default compressor. Just control that like one transient that's poking through really aggressively. And this area too, I'm gonna control that a little bit. And I'm also gonna add on a compressor here. And I'm gonna sidechain this to our kick. Here it is. Turn all these off. Fastest release, fastest attack. We'll do 5:1 ratio. And this isn't in the way of the kick at all, but I just want to do that to give it a little bit of movement and match what the respace is doing. I'm just going to copy this directly over to our layer. I'm also going to copy over this compressor, and I'm going to bypass this. I'm going to select both of these and add span onto both of them. They both seem all right. And I think I'm going to turn this reverb down a little bit, just a little intense. Definitely remove some of these lows on this reverb as well. And I'm also going to clip this because I want the option to turn this up without potentially clipping later on. I'm gonna soften this a little bit. All right, and now let's add on an EQ onto this. And we're really focusing this upper area. All of this stuff can go away. I'm gonna add on this compressor. That should get a much more consistent tone, and we can clip this guy as well. I'll pull this in a little bit, soften this up a little, and we'll go to like 3. And I'm gonna go here and automate this macro. And I'm just gonna have this rise in intensity going into this build, and then it drops when that's bass, all the basses come in, so that it makes room for it and kind of backs off. All right, so let's play from the top where we're at now.
Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay if I start to fade away? Don't know what to say if I start to fade away. Will we be okay?
All right, so we're getting a lot further along in this track now. That's going to wrap up this one. In the next one, we're going to continue just kind of fine-tuning everything, getting everything a little bit more solid. We're going to just start doing some submix mixing, specifically with the drums and the bass. I also really want to get the snare going, and we should be good to start fine-tuning this drop a little bit more. I'm hoping by the end of next video, we should have all of this like around 85% done, like pretty close to being there. Another thing to keep in mind is we're still using these splice sample vocals. So having actual vocals will fill in a ton of space because we'll do reverb swells and a bunch of delays and echoes and harmonies and stuff. So, and I know I kind of went through the mixing for the percussion pretty quick, just kind of on autopilot, but a common theme was just, again, I'm going in all those low frequencies that I know I don't need for, especially for this track. I have so much bass energy going on in that kick drum already. These really are just supposed to be very light accents. And I'm just, for the most part, using a digital compressor to control some of these harsh transients, make them all more consistent as a sound, so that when we route these all into this drum mix, there's not a bunch of transient spikes from all these non-compressed signals. And as a result, you can get a much louder sound by doing it that way. So that's the whole purpose on that. And I know I'm going kind of quick with some of the sound design stuff, but just know, like, for the most part, with the exception of like that Zap, a lot of these sounds are taking me quite a bit of time off recording because I'm messing around with them a lot. So it's not like I'm just like hearing a sound and making it in 2 seconds. I'm doing a lot of fine tuning and trial and error and stuff. But the more that you mess around with a synthesizer, the easier it's going to be. So practice recreating sounds, and anything I make in here too, I'm going to provide that FXP on my website for free. So if you want to download those and you have Serum, you can just download them and import them into your own projects and mess around with them. But that's going to be it for this one. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Tell me how you want it.